you need to cry freely as a woman leader. Yeah, in front of others. Welcome to the Wisdom of the Body podcast. I'm your host, Heather Grzych. Here, we talk about the profound connection between mind, body, and spirit. Join me and other authors, wellness experts, and everyday individuals talk about the importance of listening to our bodies, trusting our guts, and living in deeper harmony with nature. So, whether you're seeking guidance on your wellness journey or simply looking for inspiration, you're in the right place. We're thrilled to be in the top 3% of podcasts globally. You can find the Wisdom of the Body podcast on Apple, Spotify, and most other places where people listen to podcasts. You can follow by joining my email list at heathergrzych.com or by following me on Instagram at Heather Grzych. That's Heather, Grzych. I know you're going to love this podcast, so take a second right now to subscribe. Welcome to the Wisdom of the Body, where we explore holistic living and wellness and the wisdom of Ayurveda. I'm your host, Heather Grzych, author and practitioner of Ayurvedic medicine in today's sci-fi world. Today, I want to dive into a topic that comes up a lot for women leaders. We're going to talk about how to lead without being labeled a bitch. Now, I know I try not to use profanity on the podcast, but this word comes up a lot. I don't like this word bitch either, but I'm going to use it because if you're a woman leader, someone is bound to call you that. So let's start by acknowledging the landscape of leadership. Women often face unique challenges in professional environments. Assertiveness is a necessary trait for leaders, yet it can sometimes be viewed as negative for women. It's like some kind of double standard, like we can't play the same way the boys play or something. And cultural conditioning does play a big role because from a young age, women are socialized to be nurturing and accommodating. And when a woman exhibits assertiveness or ambition, she may be labeled negatively, like a bitch. It's frustrating, but this doesn't have to be the narrative. So let's talk about how we can navigate this terrain. I'm someone who's been in leadership roles, and I've been in supporting roles, and I run my own business, and I have help. And I've also done some things growing up that bent gender stereotypes. So, for example, we didn't have a girls' soccer team in high school, and I wanted to try playing. So one of the other girls in high school and I decided we were going to play on the boys' team. And that was something that we both decided in the end that we didn't want to do because some of the other teams were not very nice to us. And then personally, I just realized that soccer was too much running for me as a sport, and I preferred softball. I was just better at it, and I enjoyed it more. So I didn't continue playing the soccer, but that was a nice experiment for me. And I realized that I love softball and I didn't love soccer, and I followed what felt right. I'm pointing this out because I have, been in a lot of situations that have been created for men, for example, and have been a woman operating in those situations. So it's something I've been dealing with for a long time. And I've led teams of dozens of people. I've given talks in front of huge groups of people. And along the way, I've had to figure out what my leadership style is. And I think in my 30s, I was very confused about what kind of leader I wanted to be. I saw a woman at the company that I worked for, and she was kind of the role model for what I didn't want to be in life. She was like the highest ranking female in the company. And I looked at her and I was like, wow, I don't want her life. She had like the top job and she made tons of money and all of that. But there was just something about her that I realized like that's the person I don't want to be. And partially it's because I was trying to figure out if I was ever going to have a kid and I wanted one, and she didn't have a kid. And frankly, she just seemed extremely miserable. She was like in her 40s and she was such a cold person that I remember somebody interviewed for a job with her, and this guy at the end of the job interview, he said, I have never had anybody talk to me like that. And I cannot believe she spoke to me like that. I mean, he literally wanted to cry after the job interview. And, she was kind of like the one that we'd all labeled the bitch in the company. And one day I had a meeting one-on-one with her, and I heard her say, make a comment about how she had a piano in her house and she hadn't played it for years because of how busy she was with work. And in that moment, I started to feel really bad for her because it seemed like her climbing to this place in her career had actually sacrificed something in her that had made her happy. And then I started to wonder, well, is it even possible to be in a powerful position without, one, being unhappy, and two, without coming off as a bitch to other people? And that was right when I left my corporate career to study Ayurveda, because I was like, I'm done with this. I'm checking out and I actually went to grad school on an ashram. So that's a little bit about me. And today I'm going to talk about a few principles and practical strategies that I've learned from both the business world and in Ayurveda and my time as a yoga teacher to lead from your essence so that you feel both graceful and strong. Doesn't that sound nice? Graceful and strong. Okay. So everybody's heard this idea of your authentic self. You want to be your authentic self. And authenticity is definitely key to your well-being because you want to know your values, your strengths, your weaknesses, and you want to align with your true self. When you do this, your leadership style is going to shine. Don't try to fit into a mold. Instead, you want to cultivate your unique voice. And when you're authentic like this, it's going to foster respect and it's going to reduce misunderstandings. And in Ayurveda, being authentic means being physically, mentally, and emotionally authentic. So it's not just understanding your personality traits, like a lot of these different leadership style tests really look at that. It's also about understanding how things make you feel. Not just the thoughts in your mind, but how your body feels. When do you feel tight doing something? When does your gut feel kind of yucky in certain situations? So you want to listen to your body, whether that's on a musculoskeletal level or on your deeper feeling body, like your gut and your heart. Super important for leaders because you being authentic and speaking the truth is actually the most efficient way to live because it uses the right amount of energy. The truth always uses the right amount of energy. It doesn't use too much energy and burn you out. And it doesn't use too little energy and keep you asleep and unengaged. So don't try to lead like somebody else. And I know this can be hard because many of us have had teachers and guides, and I definitely think it's good to have teachers and guides, but a good teacher won't just show you other ways of doing things. A good teacher will lead you back to your essence. A good leader like you can be inspired by others, but you shouldn't be trying to copy other people. You can test things out like, oh, so-and-so is doing, let me test out how that feels. And then you learn and you test it out and you realize, oh, it's close, but maybe if I just do this slightly to the left of that, that's going to feel better. So I think you should experiment, but ultimately you have to figure out what your essence is and operating from that place of your essence. And one way Ayurveda helps people with this is through gaining an understanding of your prakruti, which means your nature. And we also say, okay, we want to help you learn what your true nature is. When you learn what your true nature is, you can prevent disease at the root cause. You can prevent imbalances at the root. And once you learn your prakruti, you can understand if your psychobiological essence is naturally inclined to lead with certain characteristics. Some people lead through inspiration and creativity. Other people lead through intensity and transformation. And other people lead with their stability and steadiness. So, for example, a Vata type leader is going to lead differently than a Pitta type leader and a Kapha type leader. And they all have their strengths and their challenges. It's just good to know who you are. And I think this helps you determine the right working structure that you need and even the kinds of employees and partners that you need to have to be effective. Because Vata, Pitta, and Kapha type women leaders, all of you are susceptible to being called a bitch. Doesn't matter if you're Vata, Pitta, or Kapha. I would bet, though, that Pitta leaders would be called a bitch more because their energy is more intense. Or perhaps Kapha leaders because they can appear more stubborn. I'd love to know what you think about this. Chances are, if you're a woman leader, someone's going to call you a bitch. This is going to happen. You might even call yourself a bitch because you're going to do something and be like, wow, I sound like a bitch because of your internal programming. And I have sensitivities around this because I don't want to be called a bitch. And I'm from the East Coast, and sometimes I come off as like blunt. And I think I sort of trained myself out of that a lot after going to college in Ohio for a few years. But even the word assertive I have a reaction to it. And I like to use the word insertive instead of assertive because it makes me feel like I'm giving things the attention that they deserve without being aggressive. And it's just a little play that I do in my own mind because I've spent a lot of time in my younger years where my pitta was too high. And that leads me to imbalances. You should be leading from your state of balance, not leading from your state of imbalance. Now, your imbalance can give you a superpower. You can definitely develop a superpower from your imbalance. However, it's going to impact your health negatively. So when you're leading from your state of balance, your health is good. And it's important to get to know what your state of balance is so you can work effectively and you can feel good in the process. And a lot of people know about EQ and cultivating EQ. And to me, this is like a yogi power where if you have internal awareness and you're in touch with your own inner state, whether that's your mind, your body, and emotions, you'll be able to tune into other people more effectively. And so if you increase your self-awareness, you'll be able to especially pay attention to others in a strong way, and you'll develop stronger emotional intelligence. There's a lot about boundary setting as well. When you're a female leader, you need to know when to delegate tasks and when to do things yourself. And I know that a lot of people say that women feel guilty for prioritizing their needs. I don't think all women feel this way, but some people are just really good at, being workaholics. So understanding what you need to take care of your body is really helpful, not just for you, but for everybody else. Because if you take care of your body, your mind, and your emotions, then everybody around you is going to feel that and they're going to feel good too when they're around you. So when you take the time to structure your day, take the time to take care of your body, your mind, your spirit, this kind of self-care is going to be important if you want to be a person that has the capacity to support and to lead others. And then you'll be less likely to lead from a state of imbalance and less likely to have other people call you a bitch. Although I will say that even if you're in balance and you're operating and things are feeling good to you, it is possible that somebody's still going to call you a bitch. And to a certain extent, you're not going to be able to control that. What I'm talking about is this inner state where you feel good when you're leading and you don't feel like a bitch. You feel like you're coming at it with positive intentions and you're coming from a state of balance. That's really the best that you can do. I mean, you can read how it's being received by other people, but sometimes other people are reacting to you because they have some issue and you can't control that. So really what you have to focus on is leading from a place from your essence that feels really, really, really good. And, we do it to each other, women. We are often pitted against each other in professional spaces. It's super icky. I don't know if people do it intentionally, but it happens. Don't fall into this trap. Promote collaboration instead. Create an environment where everybody feels valued and included and encourage open dialogue. I like to do brainstorming sessions because I think, it allows for people to bring forward ideas that they feel are risky and it's exciting for people to be involved in those and they feel appreciated for their ideas. So that's one way that you can engage people a little bit differently and celebrating people's successes, whether that's the collective successes of the team or the individual achievements of people on the team, because you want to be not just a leader that can lead, but you also want to be somebody who appears to be supportive. And as a woman, you're going to be expected not to have an ego. It's going to be expected of you. And if you come in trying to prove a point and say that you should be getting credit for something because a man would be getting a credit for it, or that if you come in at all like you have an ego, you're going to come off that much worse than a man. It's unfortunate, but that's how it is. So don't fall into that lower mind stuff of wanting to appear important. You are important, but take the high road and be grateful for the accomplishment. Make sure to thank everyone who supported you, because surely you did not get there alone. Even if you worked hard for it, you didn't get there alone. So always recognize that you are part of something bigger than yourself. And then you can avoid that kind of ego trap and other people kind of latching on to this egoic thing. And I think having compassion as a female leader is very, very important. And I know that women do have a superpower of, when we tap into it, being able to listen actively to our colleagues and validate their feelings. And we can even provide constructive feedback. Women are generally better at connecting groups than men are. And so showing people that you care very much about the situation, that you're committed to helping people communicate with each other, is also, I think, a big part of being a female leader's and a female leader's job. I don't think you have to be all kumbaya about things, right? So I know that sometimes talking about emotions can come off as being too soft. And this is really about finding balance. You want to have a plan, because having a plan is very helpful. Having a plan helps people get unstuck when there are issues dragging them down or preventing them from being able to move forward. And you can adjust the plan when you receive feedback from others, but you need to have a general plan. Don't be afraid of having a plan. And at the same time, don't be afraid of allowing for emotions. That brings me to my next point, which I think is super important. And I'm going to talk about this for a minute. You need to cry freely as a woman leader. Yeah, in front of others. And I know some of you are like, what? But crying is actually a natural expression of emotion, and it honors your authenticity. If you show your vulnerability, you're going to encourage those around you to be honest and open as well. And in fact, in Ayurveda, you should never ignore your natural urges. And do you remember a few minutes ago, I said that you had to live authentically, mentally, physically, and emotionally, and that that's part of you maintaining a state of balance that's going to allow you to lead from a state of balance. So holding back your tears is actually not honoring the natural urges of your body. Now, I'm not saying you should cry on purpose, and I'm not saying you should cry all the time. If you're having a lot of emotional outbursts, I think that's a sign that there's something bigger to be addressed here, and you probably want to get some help for that. But all of us experience emotions once in a while, even those of us who've been meditating for decades and going to therapy or whatever, doing all the work on ourselves. So you want to allow it when it happens, because that's what's efficient for your body. If you feel, a cry coming on somewhere and you block that in your throat because you're like, no, I need to look tough. That's actually physically hurting. It's physically harming yourself to block those tears. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to suffer in your body because of something you don't think is okay. You want to be authentic, okay? And I want to share a story with you. I was working on this project. So I was head of product development for a health insurance company for a few years when I was in my 20s and 30s. And there was a project we were working on. I was in charge of this project, and it wasn't getting the resources allocated that it needed in order to move forward. So it was kind of like stuck for a while, this project. And I was really starting to get frustrated because it was something that people said was a priority, and yet they weren't assigning the necessary resources to do it. So I was like, is it really a priority? Because you got it on your strategic plan, but you're not putting any resources on it. And so I voiced this in a meeting one day with the executive team. And I was the lowest person on the totem pole in the room. And I said, I was confused about why everybody was trying to move forward onto this new project when this other project was not getting what it needed. And I was concerned about resources being allocated on this other project when this other project wasn't getting the attention. Okay, perfectly reasonable, right? Except when I said this, my CEO got very upset with me and he started saying like, oh, I think we need a new product development person. And it was basically like, Heather, you're going to lose your job because you just said this. And my boss at the time jumped in and stood up for me. And in the process of saying that I had been, the only one advocating for this project or whatever, all the wonderful things that she said about me, she started crying. She got very emotional. And I was so moved by her crying, sticking up for me, that I started crying. And so here you have this room of mostly male executives, and my boss starts crying and I start crying. And the most amazing thing happened. You would think like, oh, that's it, our careers are over. I mean, especially because my CEO is saying right to my face that he thinks that I should be fired and they should hire a new person. The weirdest thing happened. There was a pause, and some of the other executives in the room, they were all male. There was one other female in the room. And all of the male executives, they said, you know what? Maybe Heather's right. Maybe we didn't allocate the resources. And so suddenly people wanted to come in and smooth out the tension of this difficult moment that we were all experiencing together. And everybody expressed what they were thinking and feeling in that moment. And partially it was because, there's two women crying in the room, maybe, I don't know. And they felt protective of us because my CEO's talking about firing us. I don't know. But I know that at the end of that meeting, we had the budget and the resources allocated to drive forward a project that I was beating my head against the wall on. And so everything that I had learned about leadership and whatever, being strong, it went out the door. It was like, no, it was thrown out the window, and we just went with what was truly there. And honestly, it made the project. And it made the project a success. And it's one of the coolest moments I ever had working in a group. And it showed me that we have to be able to speak with honesty when we work with other people. And okay, do I wish that I didn't cry in that situation? Sure. But honestly, I don't know if we would have gotten the result if we didn't cry. It's just what happened. So I don't know how it could turn out a different way. Crying doesn't make you weak. It demonstrates your humanity. And some people are going to disrespect you for it if you do it. But in the long run, it's going to be healthier for your body, and it's going to foster deeper connections and understanding with the people that you work with. And when you lead with this level of authenticity, you build a culture of trust and support. And we need that if we're going to be women leaders. We often experience a lot of changes than our male colleagues throughout our lives, whether that's cyclical fluctuations or change from one life stage to another. Say you're like pregnant, or you have a baby, or you're breastfeeding, or you're, going through a medical treatment, or you have a parent who's dying, other types of personal responsibilities. And not to say that men don't also have these, but women often have different roles in families, and biologically we're more required for childbearing and child rearing for breastfeeding. So that's why flexibility in our leadership roles is crucial. And we might need to adjust our schedules or responsibilities more frequently, and that's okay. And I don't think we need to apologize for this. It is challenging, and I totally understand how it can be challenging to schedule with people and develop levels of predictability when you're planning things because, well, sorry, women are just a little bit less predictable. But there's a lot of positives that come with that too. We just have to do things a little differently, the way it works for our cadence and our style. So you need to choose leadership roles that are going to allow you to have that flexibility. You need flexibility in order to thrive. You shouldn't be expected to be a robot, and you need to do what you need to do in order to be a happy, healthy human and have the good energy to be able to give to the mission of whatever it is that you're working on. And that'll allow you to be adaptable. And that allows you to honor both your professional goals and your personal well-being. And then you can lead authentically from that state of balance, like I was talking about earlier. But it can be hard to find flexible environments. I just want to say that if you're not advocating for it, no one's going to do it for you. So advocate for flexibility if you need it, because it is true that corporate structures are often built with rigid structures. it's like a very linear, like boxy process. Maybe certain types of businesses are a little more flexible than others, and maybe certain types of companies, but find the one that works for you. Or maybe you have to be self-employed. That's another thing, right? If you need the most flexibility. So choose your leadership roles wisely, because sometimes taking on a leadership role does leave you less time for other pursuits. So it's essential to choose positions that actually resonate with your passions and that are a good match for what's important to you. You want to know if it aligns with your values, with your temperament, and how much time you need for yourself, your family, your loved ones. And will it allow you to contribute meaningfully? Whatever you can do to streamline your life is efficient, right? There's a lot of us who, I've had this before, where I had a job and I didn't really like it so much. I felt like I had a lot of energy and a lot of passion left. So I had a very, very active sort of after work life where I was constantly taking classes and constantly doing lots of outside of work activities. And I realized after a while that for me, it was going to work a little more efficiently if I could do something that I was passionate about. So I didn't have to feel like I had to take all these extra things all the time after work. Although I do think variety is good. So you have to figure out what the right balance is for you. You can find mentors that resonate with your values and can offer guidance, and developing a supportive network around you to help you be the leader that you want to be. And, it's not an easy process to be a leader. People want to complain about leaders all the time. You're going to be the person that gets the blame when something goes wrong, and you're also going to get the glory. So it comes with both. And you're going to want to embrace your failures as a stepping stone. And it's cruel, but society does often punish people, especially women, when they make mistakes and label them as incapable. But if you view challenges as opportunities for learning and growth, and just be really humble about that, then you can also share the new things that you've learned along the way, and it'll humanize you. And, you can try to pretend you're perfect, but you're not going to be perfect. So just be honest. That's the best way to be. None of us should expect things to be easy. Life's always full of challenges. So as we wrap up today's episode, please remember that leadership is all about influence and inspiration, not just authority. And it's hard to not be called a bitch if you're a woman, but you can do it. And at the end of the day, you can't control other people and what they think about you. So embrace your authentic self. If you cultivate your emotional intelligence, practice your compassionate leadership, understand what your true nature is, and lead from your essence, along with allowing that vulnerability, crying when you need to, whether that's with others or home alone, so that you don't block your natural emotions. Recognize that need that you have for stability, at the same time, that need that you have for flexibility, and choose your roles wisely. And you'll be able to lead with authenticity and grace and really step into your power. So know your prakruti and learn how to spot these imbalances and develop that self-care so you can be the kind of leader that you want to be. I think women can thrive in leadership roles while defining what it means to be a strong leader. You can be strong without being called a bitch. And even if you are called a bitch, please know sometimes it has absolutely nothing to do with you. Lead from your essence. The rest will sort itself out. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Wisdom of the Body. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and share with fellow women leaders. And let's continue to empower each other. If you are embarking on a fertility journey and are ready to have your mind blown about what your body is really capable of and how it's impacted by the environment, then check out my book, The Ayurvedic Guide to Fertility. You can actually download the introduction to the book for free on my website at heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. Read the intro for free and then buy the rest of this fertility enlightening book pretty much anywhere books are sold. You want a full human experience when you seek a healthcare provider, and you don't want 15 minutes with someone who can't even try to find out the root cause of things because they're so overwhelmed themselves. You have a body, a mind, a heart, and dare I say it, even emotions. You're not crazy. Everything does affect you, and it's possible to feel better if you have the support you need. Set up an appointment with me to heal naturally. Go to heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, Grzych.com. Thank you for tuning in and dropping in with us today. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. I really want to hear your feedback. To learn more about my work, visit heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, Grzych.com. And meet me here next time on The Wisdom of the Body.